All right, I will open the Monday, March 1st, 2021 Board of Selectmen's meeting and call it to order. Before we get started, I'll have Tim McIntosh introduce everybody.
All right, we have, sorry about that. So we have on the line today, Selectman Lisa Pacheco, Selectman Trevor Matthews, Selectman George Grunwald. We have our building commissioner, Jeff Chandler, on the line as well, Peter Jankowski, our town administrator, myself, Tim McIntosh, executive assistant, Luann Souza, she's our senior clerk in the Selectman's office. And also joining us tonight, we have Eric R. Bean of Serpide and Lisa Sullivan of the Department of Energy Resources. They're going to be giving a little bit of a quick presentation for us.
All right, I will turn it over to Lisa and Eric. Welcome.
Thank you. I can share my screen?
Yep, I can set that up so you can do that.
That'd be great. That way you can see the presentation.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for having us. I understand you have a busy agenda, so we'll try to keep it brief.
Should be able to share your screen now.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so Eric works for Serpide, and Serpide has an agreement with the Department of Energy Resources to offer technical assistance within communities in their region. And so they have an MOU with Freetown to offer you assistance to obtain Green Communities designation. It's for up to $7,500. And that's why Eric is on the line with us, so that he could explain how he could avail you of his services at no cost to you to do the things like the energy reduction plan and things we're going to talk about. Okay, so Green Communities is a division for all Massachusetts communities, not just Green Communities. We have a designation and grant program, the LED streetlight program, the Mass Energy Insight tracking tool, and other things like meta grants and technical assistance grants like REPA. We had 31 new Green Communities designations in 2019. 9 new communities applied this year and are soon to be designated. We give up to $20 million a year in grants to qualifying communities, and those grants fund energy efficiency initiatives in their municipal buildings. The funding sources are the RGGI funds and alternative compliance payments, so it's not a tax on residents. And I know you have this presentation, so I'm kind of going through it fairly quickly, and you can ask questions after. We gave away $136.4 million in grants. They've resulted in $20.8 million in savings per year in utility bills. There's been many grants complete. This number's not even accurate because we just are closing out grants right now so we can enter our next competitive round. This is what some of your neighbors have received. So you'll see the communities that are near you, the designation year, and their total grants that they've received to date. We anticipate if you tried to get designated and you could meet the 5 criteria, that your first grant would be about $147,000. And you would be able to choose which buildings you would do energy efficiency measures in and which projects you were to do with that funding. So the first step to becoming a green community would be for your selectmen, your elected officials, to say they would like to pursue that. And then we would start the process of working with you to meet the 5 criteria. So the first thing is as of right siting for, it can be for renewable or alternative generation, or R&D, or manufacturing. If you have any as of right siting, for example, in an industrial park for light manufacturing, it's possible that you would qualify. I believe that I looked at Freetown zoning and you actually qualify under all 3. I think you have an alternative you have a generation bylaw, and you have areas that allow by right R&D and or testing and manufacturing. You don't have to apply under all 3, you could pick one. In case, for example, if you were to, I would say you'd pick one, because if you ever change your zoning for example, renewable generation, then you would need to report that to us. If you, right now, you allow alternative generation everywhere within your community. You don't have a specific zone. Criteria 2 is just saying in those as of right areas by which you apply to become a green community. If it was, for example, as of right zoning for manufacturing in your industrial area, you have to say that you could process an application and permit it within a 12-month period. So your legal counsel writes a letter to say that that would be true. Criteria 3 is where a SERPID would come in and help you. We would help you establish an energy baseline and figure out how we can save 20% of the energy that you use over 5 years. We'd audit your municipal buildings and schools. We'd do an inventory of all your vehicles. We'd see what you use for gas and diesel. We'd look at your street lights and traffic lights, your water and your wastewater facilities. Criteria 4 is we'd be asking you to adopt a fuel efficient vehicle policy. We'd want the schools, your local schools, to adopt it as well. So if you have a local elementary or intermediate or both, you could include them in your energy reduction plan, and they would tell us what their vehicle inventory was, and they would also be adopting this fuel efficient vehicle policy. They would also, those local schools would also adopt your ERP along with your Board of Selectmen. The criteria for guidance, this was updated. This is the fuel efficient vehicle policy. I put this up here just so you can see that it's not a hard policy to meet. This does not keep anyone from becoming a green community. Two-wheel drive cars, for example, new cars they're getting 30 miles per gallon. So basically what this is saying when you adopt the fuel efficient vehicle policy is that when you make new purchases, that you'll look at more fuel efficient options. And if you're buying a non-exempt vehicle, which is a vehicle that you're not using for public safety purposes, like an emergency management or emergency response vehicle, and doesn't have a gross vehicle weight of over 8,500 pounds, that you would acquire vehicles that meet these requirements. It also is telling you that when you recycle vehicles, we want you to look at the efficiency of the vehicles as you move them around, and that we want you, if you're moving a vehicle that you already own to another department, we want it to be more fuel efficient than the one it's replacing, so that your fleet continues to get more efficient over time. Criteria 5 is typically where you get some pushback when you're becoming a green community. You have to minimize life cycle costs in new construction. You do this by adopting a general bylaw, and it's the stretch code. The stretch code is right now, it's a different code, and it basically takes the base code and adds a little more stringent energy saving conservation measures to it. And it will always be a little bit of a stretch over the base code. So if the building code changes, the stretch code will change too. And also that so that when communities that adopt the stretch code will be, I would say you'll be leaders. You're going to be more energy efficient with your new construction than people who had the communities that haven't adopted the stretch code. The stretch code has been adopted by 287 municipalities to date, and we have many more who are adopting it in the spring. Stretch code applies only to new residential construction, so not additions, not repairs, not renovations, and it's new commercial construction over 100,000 square feet. So this is like a big Home Depot, a Walmart, maybe a supersized supermarket. And it also applies to conditioned spaces over 40,000 square feet. So those might be like labs and stores over 3,000 square feet. And I already told you, you document that you adopted the stretch code by adopting it at a town meeting as a general bylaw. And this is for just for the basis of transparency, what I said. The HERS rating that's required is 55 for stretch code. The most recent changes to the stretch code clarified that 4-story multifamily had to follow the HERS or passive health path. The HERS 55 raised to HERS 60 if you had ground source heat pumps. What I wanted people to know most specifically is that we're anticipating a change to the base energy code or the base building code next year. And so we anticipate that there will also be a slight change to the stretch code, which is not known right now what it will involve. Stretch code is not new and experimental. It's based on the old Energy Star homes. Building sciences evolve, so stretch code does not require like a tight, unhealthy home. And as again, where you get the most pushback is most people don't understand when you're going to town meeting. We have to educate them that it only applies to new residential construction and exempts additions and renovations and repairs. And I already talked to you, the stretch code is not much of a stretch anymore. In the current base code, you can go through a prescriptive way of getting to the base code or performance. You can do the pre and post construction energy modeling. It's a choice. Some people do choose to do the performance path and have HERS ratings. When you adopt the stretch code, you have to go the performance path. You have to do that pre-construction and post-construction modeling. It's required. So just to let you know what a HERS rating is, they rate the home, they do a blower door test. In a HERS rating of 55 on a home means it's 45% more efficient than the reference home, which is, a home that was built back in 2006. So it just shows you on this thermometer-based chart that this is a new standard home. And if you have a HERS rating, it's of 55, which is required when you're a stretch code community, that your home will be 45% more efficient. And this is just showing you that the HERS process, that's the blower doors test. It's basically saying that your building inspector still does everything he always did. It doesn't take away your local control. Your building official is still responsible for the inspections he does, but this third-party modeler, performance tester, is going to be doing tests as well, and he's going to be giving the results of that testing to your building official. Your building official will check that the HERS rating is a 55 by looking at the documents that are given to him by the HERS rater, and he'll confirm that they meet the requirement of 55 before he issues an occupancy permit. Why test performance? It's just it's good to have a third-party test performance. Prescriptive codes don't always guarantee good installation, air and water tightness, or that thermal insulation is effective, and there can be small air gaps that reduce insulation and R values. So the HERS rater provides third-party verification. And this is just a little slide to say that some people are actually out there looking for HERS rated homes now. They're selling better and on average for 2.7% more than comparable unrated homes. This is just, again, a review that we anticipate the update to base building code and the stretch code for January, probably of 2022 would be the effective target date. And that's it. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them, and Eric could answer them. I know you, again, have a full agenda. You could also email me with questions if you don't have time, or call me on my cell phone.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I did go through it, but I'm going to open it up to the board. George or Trevor, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of our neighbors have adopted this, quite a few years ago. I wonder, why. I mean, I'm a relatively new selectman here, but why has Freetown not signed up yet? Is there any kind of, glaring issues that we should know about?
Yeah, we went to town meeting several years back, and town meeting voted it down due to the stretch code. I mean, there are probably a lot of reasons why that I'm not privy to all of them, but certainly the additional cost involved to contractors and builders. Also, how it would impact affordable housing in our area, because those houses may not be as affordable to those seeking affordable housing. And like I said, increase in housing costs, construction costs, and the impacts on affordable housing. That's why it didn't pass at town meeting.
Gotcha. And then one follow-up question too is, so I know we have some projects that are currently underway where they're going through the process, right? Some new kind of, I think 55 and over construction development. would this be applied to these type of new rules, or if it's already gone through, planning and stuff, is it still?
So a couple things. It would be things permitted when you adopt the stretch code. If you were looking to adopt it in the spring, it would probably be effective July 1. And if you adopted it in the fall, it would be January 1. Any permits that have already been pulled before your effective date are not subject to the stretch code. That's why you put a date, like for congruity purposes, so you know what code you're following. As far as I want to just address Mrs. Pacheco's comment about the costs are relatively low. Because the base code and the stretch code are so similar at this point, the cost to stretch to meet it is pretty low. They do have to pay the HERS rater, and that cost is likely passed on to the homeowner. But the cost in the savings in the utility bills is the payback period is less than a year in most cases, depending on the type of heat. And we do a stretch code specific presentation to educate the public and your elected officials before you go to town meeting, and maybe even before you put it on the warrant. And we break it down by cost and payback according to the type of heat that's in the home, electric, oil, or heat pump, or gas, so that people are very well educated and can understand what the results. Energy is not getting any cheaper. So this is certainly something that the payback is there and is worthwhile. And that's why we think 287 communities have decided to adopt the stretch code.
Yeah, Trevor just asked me why it didn't pass, and that's why it didn't pass. I was just answering a question.
I know. I would just like to make sure. I'm sorry. I'm not. I think probably because it didn't pass for the same reason in other communities, we did more due diligence, prepared a better presentation, and do more educational materials because we want to make sure everyone has the right information. I don't know when that was. I wasn't the program coordinator. I think Seth Pickering probably was. And there could have been other reasons. The stretch code might have been might have been a harder reach back then, depending on when it was.
Yeah, I mean, certainly things have changed throughout the years, and more homes are energy efficient. That just came up before. I don't know how town meeting would voice concerns over this one way or the other. George, do you have any questions?
To be clear, this only affects new construction. So it wouldn't affect anyone at a town meeting that was already living here in a house. They wouldn't have to do anything, correct?
Correct. The stretch code is only new construction. Does not. I live in Bridgewater. We're a stretch code community, have been since 2010. I added on to my house. It did not have to meet the stretch code because it was an addition. So that's additions, renovations are not a kitchen remodel, anything like that, and a new screen porch. None of that's going to be subject to the stretch code.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. You said that we would have approximately $147,000 in grant, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but that's not a guaranteed every year, correct?
What that is your designation grant. When you meet the 5 criteria, you put in, you submit it for approval. We get back, we award the grant. Yours would be $147,000 because it's based on a formula. We start with $125,000 and then apply a per capita population and income to it. And that's how we come to the amount that you get. But every year after you close one grant, when you complete the energy efficiency projects you choose to do for that, with that 147,000, every year you would be eligible to apply for another grant. We call them competitive grants for up to $200,000. And that's how some of the communities, some of your neighbors have gotten up to almost $1 million at this point, because they've not only used their designation funding, but then they've come back and they keep applying for competitive grants on an annual basis.
Right, but my point was, after that first initial 147, you're not guaranteed. You have to put in for a competitive grant, and you're not guaranteed. That's all my question. Okay. All right. I have another question. Also, it said the third-party tester. What is the cost for that?
It's usually around $1,200.
And who bears that cost?
Well, the general contractor would be bearing the cost, but I'm not going to say that they're going to pass it on to the person who's building the home for sure. There's no doubt about it. But the way that you look at the payback period is the energy savings over the course of your utility bills. And sometimes it's paid back within 3 months. But when some types of heat, there's like no payback period. If someone installs heat pumps, it's a very short payback period. So does that make sense? So
Yep, it'll be,
it's
yeah.
always less than a year, honestly.
it'll be borne by the person paying for the house. That's
It
probably
is.
where it's gonna, okay. And also you talked about oil. In one of your slides, it said oil, like that you don't say no to oil, but it's easier for gas. And then you left, it said, but ... So I just want to know if you can elaborate on the ...
So I think what they were saying, and I'm sorry I went through the slides so quickly. I just knew you had about 15 minutes. So what that was, it was a misconception. It said that can people who heat with oil meet the 55 HERS score? And the answer is yes. If you're doing new construction and you're putting oil in, then you can meet the HERS score. It's easier to do it with gas or VRF, but oil can. But there are very few permits pulled anymore to put oil in homes. I think there were in Massachusetts, I think it was under 10 permits. People are going with propane because propane is more efficient than oil. You can get a more efficient boiler or furnace with a higher efficiency rating. So oil is not something we see very much anymore anyway.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, these grants, they would apply to a solar panels for a house, or if we wanted to do the school to.
No. So it doesn't. They do not pay for solar. What they pay for is like HVAC, heat pumps in your schools, programmable thermostats. We put variable frequency drives on your water pumps, and we do new motors, better, more efficient motors, rooftop ventilators. We do those for schools, LED lighting, retrofits, all those kind of things to reduce your energy use.
I have a question. What about more efficient windows for a town hall?
So windows have a long payback period. You can put in for those projects, and a lot of times people do. We have definitely paid for, I would not say windows, but storms. It's a very long payback period on windows, depending on how old they are. If they were a single pane glass, it would probably have a fairly quick payback period.
Yep.
But if they have double pane windows, the payback period would probably be very long. So we pay for them, but so my point is, it's in a competitive grant, if it's going to be a 300-year payback for energy savings based on what the cost you need custom windows, then it's beyond what we call the measured life. And we might look for you to make a town contribution. Does that make sense?
Yep.
We have single pane.
It's something you would want to be looked at. When you do an audit, you would want the energy company manager to look at it, especially if you're not using storms, because that definitely would mean that there's a lot of energy loss.
We have some storms and some missing panels, so.
Yeah, I worked in a municipal building like that for a long time.
Jeff, do you want to weigh in on anything, or are you just here to listen?
I may talk later. I'm listening. I'm agreeing in most parts. So we'll just continue and I'll keep listening.
No, I would appreciate maybe after you go through the presentation, I don't know if Tim gave it to you, that maybe you can write something for the board.
Okay, yeah.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you so much. You gave us a lot to digest. Obviously, this would have to go to town meeting. I think probably that would be the first step, and maybe I think it'd probably be too quick to do it for the annual town meeting, but usually our zoning articles and some of our bylaw articles get changed at the fall town meeting, where we don't do monetary articles. So I would think that would probably be something perfect for the fall, and then it would enable you to do whatever marketing, should we go this route, whatever marketing that you would have to do during the summer before the annual fall town meeting.
Yeah, so my next step would be, I would want to make sure you as a board, an elected board, felt comfortable with the stretch code. So we would bring in a stretch code expert to work with you, to talk to you, to do a presentation, to show you those cost benefit slides. I always encourage you to call your neighbors, the elected officials in the towns who have adopted stretch codes, the building officials in the towns who have adopted this, so that you understand. I understand you're probably an under-resourced community. You don't have a lot of extra staff. You're concerned about how this would affect you. Is it going to be more work for us? Is, what's our role going to be? So reach out to other communities that you would reach out if you were doing anything. I worked in a municipality, and we always had like communities that we would bounce things off of. How did this affect you? What did you do? And I would encourage you to do so.
Yeah, I'd also like to see some like specific examples of where we could apply these grants or actually use them. I think that might help, if we do present this at a town meeting, to kind of show, so people can have something specific, like this is where it's going to be felt, so.
Yep, so you get to pick your projects. We also offer grants for EV and hybrids. We offer grants for charging stations. There's a lot of things that, you can do. We offer grants to help you with the administration of the grants, because we know that a lot of communities are under-resourced. And I can send you a map of all the green communities, and it actually shows you what everybody has received for money to date. And it has a very brief description of the projects they've done. So you can actually see like where, like I've done thermostats in my library, I've done HVAC work, we've done windows, we've done, and it's millions and millions of dollars. I'll say it again, I worked in Bridgewater for 16 years. We received well over $1 million. We received lots of utility rebates on top of that, and reduced our energy use significantly. So that's money that you get to put back into public safety, education, and infrastructure. So it's a welcome bonus. And the other thing is, sometimes if you're lucky, the stars align, and it can align with your capital plan. And you need to put a new boiler in your town hall, and the funding is available to do that. Because the Green Communities Grant period lines up maybe with your capital plan, and that can result in capital savings. So all good things.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Very
so
well.
much. Thank you.
Eric, do you have anything to add? I'm sorry, it took the show.
No, that's okay. Yeah, at Serped, we do a lot of different planning, and we're here. I've helped 14 or 15 communities in the region. Most recently, Rochester, I was working with their facilities person. I've worked with a number of smaller type communities on this. I know Acushnet's a green community. We've helped Wareham and bigger towns, as well as smaller towns for Hobith. So, smaller towns can do it, under resource towns. Serped, we're here to help kind of guide you through the process and do some of that paperwork on that end. So we do have a grant, and we'll be able to, if you're going to hold off or if you decide to move forward, we'll be here. And the folks at the Department of Energy Resources said we could roll the grant over to next year if you want to move forward with it. So just let us know. We'll be here, a phone call away. If you have any questions about moving forward with the program, or if you do move forward, going through it, I'm going to be a close contact, helping guide the town through the process.
Thank you. Anybody have anything for Eric? All right. Thank you so much, Eric. We'll be in touch. Lisa, thank you so much. You've answered all of our questions.
You're very welcome. We look forward to hopefully working with you all in the future. Have a
All
great
right.
night.
You too.
great
Thank
night.
you.
Yep, thank you.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Lisa,
Yes.
a question for you. This was turned down at a town meeting. I don't really remember it. But what were the objections? Do you remember that?
It was definitely the stretch code. There were too many restrictions, and it would increase the house for the homeowners, and also for businesses coming in, it would increase the cost of that business because of the extra layer of another tier onto the already stringent building code. So that was some of the issues. But like I said, a lot has changed over the years, and I'm not sure exactly if people would feel the same way or not. This was quite a while ago. I don't even remember the date, but it was a while ago.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And Jeff, you're gonna look through that presentation for us?
Yes. I would say something at this point. I look at it as it is going to increase the cost of the homeowner. There's no doubt about that. It's $1,800 to get a HERS rating, another $1,200 to get the blower door test. That is definitely going to the taxpayer that would own that house. My thing is, a stretch code, you have to go to their maximum. A regular code, you don't have to, but it doesn't mean that somebody can't do that, to a new home. Most of the homes are doing it, but they're kind of right in the middle. And now they're going to be told what they have to do. And I personally don't think that's fair to the residents of Freetown.
It's the new residents, not the old residents, right? Anyone coming to town.
Well, a lot of people are building new homes for their kids and all that. So yes, that would affect them, the older.
But isn't the payback, very good, so that whatever your cost is up front, you get that back? How many years would you say? 1 year, 2 years, 10 years?
I would seriously be saying 10 years, 10, 15 years. The issue of that is with the stretch code, they're making houses too restrained. It's not allowing gases to escape. You would have to put a air makeup in, and that has to be run 24 hours a day. And what's happened, we're finding what's happened on that with our district meetings that we have. People, the other commissioners do stand up and say, well, what's happening is they're disconnecting those air makeup machines because they don't want to hear that, all that, year round, 24 hours a day. So they're defeating the whole purpose once it gets going. But my issue is it's an extra cost on the homeowner. And again, it's really forcing them to go to the maximum. Codes are set for a good reason.
But Jeff, there are 351 towns in the Commonwealth, right? 287 have adopted it. More adopted in the future. Isn't the logic is to adopt the code, being more compliant, be more energy efficient? I mean, that's the trend by far.
But people can do that. And we're not telling them that they have to do it. They will do it on their own. There are a lot of people that don't have that money, and they're trying to figure out how they can make things work by building with a construction without the government telling them you have to do it this way.
How much is
government's not all bad? Okay.
Yeah. How much is the average cost on a new home? Say a $300,000 home, whatever. Let's say 2,000 square foot home. How much would that add to the construction cost?
Well, with everything all said and done with the HVAC, all that, you're probably talking another $8,000 to $10,000 on top of that.
So you're talking about 2% of the cost of the house, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the savings, annual savings on energy?
It's not, if they built it to code, the regular code, you still have those savings. If they do it to you got to look at too, with that air makeup, that's running 24 hours a day. So now they're not talking about that electricity be running that all the time. So where are you saving? Electric, or it's not a wash. Don't get me wrong, it is good, but I think the houses are just at this point with the stretch code, the houses are too tight. And that has been an issue in the last couple years after they started doing the spray insulation on the ceiling, sealing that up. There's no ventilation for the house itself now. And my fear is people are going to start getting sick. And it's starting to get to that point that they're getting that data.
So Jeff, can you just put your thoughts down for the board so we can just go over them and mull them over? Also, I'd like to go back to the grant part of this because you might get the first year, you might get like Lakeville might have gotten $500,000 the first year and maybe even only $10,000 all the other years. I don't know. It seems like it's a big amount in the beginning and then it's competitive. So one year you might not get any grant. You're not guaranteed a grant. So I'd like to look at how competitive the grants are, what the grants, like Trevor said, what the grants can be used for. And then also see what the average that Lakeville has gotten. So, and there's another thing too, like the schools are located in Lakeville. So Lakeville can use the 3 schools over there as part of whatever their grant is going to be, right? So they have more ability to get a greater amount of grants where we have 1 school and really they really take care of the school district takes care of it anyway. You know, but there are probably things that we can take care of in that school. But other than that, I mean, the police station's brand new. If we're gonna do the COA, then, you know, whatever way we do it, it looks like that, if we adopt a stretch code, we're gonna have to do that for that. So I just, there's a lot to digest and I'm not ready to make a decision one way or the other. I wanna like weigh the pros and cons of everything.
Yeah, I have talked to Nate Dowling about that, and he says it was awesome in the beginning. That's what they gave us, that big chunk of money. And he says with everybody joining, those grants have dropped, you know, so much that it's kind of borderline with a lot of towns right now. You know, with over in Middleborough, even Berkeley, I'm just going around with the inspectors that I've actually talked to about that. You know, again, there's pros and cons. I'm seeing certain things that, you know, that the inspectors actually see, and that those are, again, I'll write that all down so you can look at that. I think it's nice, but it's, in my opinion, it's making the homes too tight, and it's so new that it's gonna create an issue down the road.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All
Jeff.
right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm Tanya. Are you here?
Yes, I think.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take this out of order so you don't have to wait around. So I'll turn it over to the Board of Health.
Okay, we still have to, the only item we have to go over is the goals for Tanya. And you had a list of goals that you presented us, which I thought were very good, Tanya. I only had one minor thing to add to that. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
No, I tried thinking about today, trying to come up with something good. I honestly, I didn't want to come up with a goal just to come up with one, because I'm not really coming from a place of knowledge on this. So, I mean, what I saw is fine so far.
Okay.
I can give her one of mine.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Are you trying to give stuff away, are you, Peter?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The only thing I wanted to add to that was that I would like to see from Tanya a weekly or maybe possibly a monthly report of ongoing projects and their progress, so that we could keep up with what is going on. I talked to Peter about this a little bit this morning, and so other than that, I really don't have anything. Tanya here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you just expand on that a little bit, as far as the detail of the monthly report? Just because,
No, I can. I'm not looking for a ton of information, but just let's call it an overview.
okay,
You know, it doesn't have to have much detail, wouldn't be necessary, but just to keep up with what the projects are, basically. So
Sure.
the board, we're not working in the dark and have to keep asking you, you know?
no. And likewise, I sent in a quick email today regarding sites. We talked about this last week. Trevor had brought up a site. I've seen a few sites come in through Lisa, a few mentioned here and there. And so I penned up a quick email today to send to you guys, because I equally would like to start building that rapport back and forth. So I understand what you guys are looking for as well. And there's a lot of variety with locations and different things, everything from dog feces that may be spiking coliform counts in shallow wells to, animal complaints, which I'm distributing with the ACO, who does a great job. And then a lot of other aspects, hoarding, campers, cars, they're starting to pile up, no pun intended. So if you guys can help me as well by submitting some of the things that you might just think of, it would assist me greatly as things start to come in. Once the weather breaks, it's kind of like things bloom everywhere. The snow melts and people start to wake up. In conjunction with your standard stuff, George, and the board, the standard permit reviews and site-specific visits and stuff, those could be like standard, and I can plug in numbers. But if there's something else that you think of, I'm equally looking for information from you so I can best serve the board.
Well, I think we could start with looking at your report at the end of the month and discussing it, and then maybe build from there.
Wonderful.
So
Oh,
Tanya, I know you were asking for the sites, and you have the 3 from last week. One Lark Lane is the one that Trevor added to that, and then Narrows Road, the Tate property, that's been an ongoing one.
55.
Right, and then also on Brayley Road, that's already in the court system. So that one.
Do you remember what number or approximately, or is that a frequent flyer? So
That's a frequent flyer, and you'll find a whole
Yeah.
stack on that one. And there's also been, I'll send you one more. It's on Chipaway too. It's been an issue with a horse. No, the house was on fire. There's nobody living there, but there's a horse living there.
Oh, okay.
Lisa, who identifies all these sites and how long have they been in place? This is really the first I've run into it. And
So a site is usually they'll call like the town administrator, or somebody will call the board of selectmen or whatever. Some of these issues have been going on for a long time, right?
Mhm.
Some of them for years, and they end up in the court system, but there's no accountability, because if they go to the court and the court doesn't follow through, or it just kind of falls off the wayside until it becomes an issue again. And then you give people time to do what they're supposed to do, and it's like Tanya said last week, sometimes it's a cat and mouse game, right? They do all the things that they're supposed to do, so you leave them alone, and then all of a sudden slowly they start to go back to old ways. So it's how to keep them accountable. And it's like self-policing your neighborhood is really what it comes down to. That's how people complain about what's going on.
just so that I understand better, I know I drive down some road and I see a house and there's three junk cars sitting there and an old trailer. And that's out of code, I'm going to assume. So who identifies that first and reports it? I mean, what is the process?
So we have a zoning enforcement agent, and that's really Jeff, but that's why we talked about doing a part-time zoning enforcement agent who would actually be the person responsible in conjunction with the Board of Health and the building department to go around and look at those properties and hold those things accountable, other than also ensuring that businesses are following the zoning issues and everything else, and everybody's, being held to the same level of accountability. So we were talking about maybe adding that as a part-time position, because it is overwhelming. But again, George, it's like self-policing. You go by your neighborhood and all of a sudden you see trash in the front yard and you see a trailer and you think somebody's living back there, and then all of a sudden there's not 2 cars anymore, there's 5 cars. You're going to get aggravated, right? Because you're living next door and you don't know if those cars have oil in them, if they're seeping into the well system, because over here, we all have wells. So I think it's that kind of self-policing that people do. When it gets to be too much and overwhelming, they end up calling town hall and letting them know.
Yeah.
So
On the other side, there's a lot of pushback, like from a lot of people have the mentality in town where like, this is my property, don't worry about it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
So it's a fine line.
Yeah.
It's a fine line.
Yeah. So, which I've dealt with that, like, just talking to different neighbors, they, just don't look at it if you don't like it kind of mentality. Which,
Right.
Do we have regulations to enforce?
No, I agree. We do.
We do.
Totally right, George. I'm just letting you know what kind of how sometimes this is.
Oh, yeah, no, I drive by them. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I think
So-
the ones like George that you were just saying, like the 3 cars and whatever, I think like those are so insignificant. If you went by some of the other ones that we're talking about on this list, you can see it's like night and day. Like those 3 cars in the yard is nothing compared to the 25. That's
Oh, you
together.
talked about a junkyard already.
Right.
So I guess where I'm going with this is we have town officials, let's say, not selectmen necessarily, but officials, police, fire, whoever, and they must see these things. Are we asking them to report those to us?
I don't know about reporting, but I do know that they do serve the homeowner a citation or.
Well, but that's already after the
Right.
fact. What I'm trying to,
I know
Right.
you're trying, I don't know. I'm just saying, usually how it happens is people self-police and people call in and say, my neighbor's getting out of control. And that's what happens. And then usually the Board of Health or the building inspector, as the zoning enforcement agent, will go by, and sometimes with a police escort to, look at what is really going on.
what I'm getting at is, and I'm sure it's not going to be popular, but we have people that drive around town all the time. As an example, our police department, they must see this. Would it be, part of their responsibility to report these things to town hall so that we could then take action? Because I know at some of these places that I'm aware of, they've been like that for years.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think that Peter could probably sit down with Carlton and, hash that all out.
Yeah. Well, Peter, how have you handled that in other towns?
Usually it's a complaint-driven system. Usually the officers, you don't put them in that situation, but usually the larger ones usually get turned in by their neighbors, and we act on those. I think, to be honest with you, right now, we have half a dozen or so large ones. I think Tanya and Jeff need to focus on those. I'm not worried about the guy with the 2 or 3 cars. That's really the minor one. But when they get up to, half a dozen cars, no, a dozen cars or more, I think we need to act. And I think we've been kind of lax on it before, for whatever reason. I think we want to start taking some proactive steps. But I think the ones they're addressing, the half a dozen or more now, is going to be enough to keep them busy for a little bit. And those are the worst offenders. Let's work on them first.
Yeah. And so one thing that stood out to me last meeting where, we had someone who has a lot of cars on their property, and, the fines he's paying to keep those there is cheaper than it would be for him to actually store those cars somewhere else. So, that shows that we probably should look at the fee structure there and how much our fines are, right?
Right.
Make it actually, somewhat impactful to their pocket. Usually that drives that behavior. So I don't know what it would take for us to review those, or just, even to make a change. I don't know how that works. So something I'd like to learn more.
I'd like to see a system, to wait for neighbors to do things does not seem like a very efficient way to do anything. Plus, it's putting people in difficult situations. But again, I think there should be some system in place that we could follow.
Well, we can look at a proactive mechanism to do that. I do know, for example, we have one individual who has more than 20 cars. He's using his residential lot as an overflow lot for his auto business up in another town. That shouldn't be allowed. If he's in business, he should be up, not filling it up down here. That's
Right.
versus a guy who has 2 or 3 hobby cars he's working on,
That shouldn't be an issue, 2 or 3 cars, like you said.
Right.
But if he has 10, 20 cars that are really part of a business,
Yeah.
that to me would be totally unacceptable. And again, my question would be, how do I identify that to take action? That, to wait for a neighbor to report another neighbor, that's counterintuitive for me.
Well, we can have a proactive, but I think that's worth taking a look at and how you're going to handle that and see how other towns do it. I just think right now, today, you got half a dozen or more that Jeff and Tanya are working on. Tanya just got here. I think those are the big ones that everyone's dealing with. And I'd like to make a solid dent in those. And then we can be a little more proactive on the other ones, the middle of the
Okay.
road. That's
Well,
all.
it's a start.
It is. Well, they've been sitting there for years, like Lisa said, so let's try to make some effort.
All right, thank you, Tanya. Does anybody have anything else?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, weekly warrants, 37 to 40. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just gotta do
Snowplow
the roll call for that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. Selectman Grunwald,
Yes.
Selectman Matthews,
Yes.
and Selectman Pacheco.
Yes. Okay, snowplow contract for 2021 snow season for Curtis Piver. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion granted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Selectman Grunwald,
Yes.
Selectman Matthews,
Yes.
and Selectman Pacheco.
Yes. Additional advertising guidelines for the annual town report. Peter or Tim?
I'll let Tim do it.
We got a request from some nonprofits in town that wanted to, maybe if they got a second advertisement for the annual town report, they wanted a little bit of a price break. So we put together a few little different guidelines here. I'm trying to pull it up. Well, let's see. So a business rate, currently it's $100 for a business size ad. If someone wanted to purchase a double ad, $200. And then for a nonprofit rate, we would make the business card $65 and a double ad space $100.
So did everybody have time to look that over?
Wasn't there a request for like a half page or quarter page too, Tim?
He didn't specify the size. He did send a follow-up email asking for a full page ad, but we can kind of go with this and just tell him that this is what it is, or we can expand upon it. Totally your choice.
I think it's good to start off with. I mean, if we have to readjust for next year, we can, or whomever. I'll entertain a motion to approve the additional advertising guidelines set forth by Tim McIntosh and the town administrator.
Motion granted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Grunwald,
Yes.
Selectman Matthews,
Yes.
and Selectman Pacheco.
Yes. Also, I'll go through to ask, I know you sent an email out, Peter, regarding the town report. and maybe doing a reduced amount of copies.
Yes, just because what folks have said internally. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, we end up with boxes and boxes of extras, and it seems a bit excessive.
Yeah, that's fine.
We put
Okay.
it up to bid too, and we have a local company in Freetown wanting to do it. So I think it's good to support the local businesses. That's all.
Awesome. All right, the chapter 40B resale right of the first refusal for 24 Freeman Circle. Has everybody taken a look at that?
Yes,
All right. I just have a question. Did they send a new letter because it did say Lakeville in it?
No, I have not contacted them to follow up about that. We wanted to bring this to the board to see if you guys wanted to follow Mike's recommendations there, or if you guys had no interest at all and we just wanted to get rid of it.
He did have some interesting side notes for sure. Like we do want to make sure that it stays 40B, because we are, like he said, woefully low in that area. So I would agree with that, as long as it doesn't change any of that. I know that we don't need the property, or I would think that we wouldn't want the property, that it would need to stay in the 40B allotment, but that's my personal opinion.
now, isn't the owner responsible to keep the price within the affordable range? How does that work exactly? I was a little confused by the verbiage that went along with this.
Myself, I honestly don't know on that. I know we're obligated to pay the price they're asking for, which is, I think, 249,000. So most towns, if they don't have a purpose for that, they pass on it, on their rights to do that. I honestly don't know about the 40B program. Usually there's a penalty phase within the agreement if they sell it within a certain amount of time or period of years, since they got funding for that. I don't know if that's with this or not. If it is, they would just pay the fee. If not, they're allowed to sell it outside, but I'm not sure.
I mean, one of the questions I had was, it seemed to me if it was sold at a higher price, it would fall out of the 40B, which would then open up another slot for another developer later on. Could we get clarification on that for the next meeting, maybe? Or
Okay.
do we have to act now?
No, you have
So
up to 60 days.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, you have 60 days to act.
Okay.
I don't know if it opens up another slot. I don't, because developers can always come in with a project and exercise their 40B options on that. So I don't think it really opens a slot per se, because they always have that right to do that. It's just you lose an affordable housing count in your town, and I don't think there's very many of that in Freetown. It's
I think, isn't it that you have to meet 10%?
right.
Okay.
Once you meet 10%, you can, they don't have the automatic, contractors, developers don't have the automatic right to exercise 40B. But if you're under the 10%, they do. And a lot of them will do that. So.
Yes, I think that's what this is about. If too many of these homes are sold for market prices rather than affordable, then your 40B stock goes down and somebody can come.
I think our stock is way below anyhow, so.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
we're not even close
Yeah.
to having
We're
the
not even
right
close.
amount of the threshold.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But we could just send it to the ZBA. Mike suggested that as well, because they are the permitting authority for the 40B projects, and have them weigh in on it, just to make sure that we're not doing anything we shouldn't to hurt ourselves. So we can wait, and we can put this on the next agenda to have our questions answered, if that's what the board wants.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Well, that's actually, the ZBA portion is actually just one part of this, the universal deed rider. We should probably, if we want to continue and, disperse, send this around to the different departments, we should probably be asking the housing authority for their input on it that way.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you, Tim.
All right.
Okay, the next thing is the 5-member Board of Selectmen.
You asked for some information on that. I gave it to you. I gave you a couple different surveys, who has 5-member towns in the area, and a list of just cherry pick some throughout the state. This is really more of a decision how you folks want to perceive going forward with your governing of your town.
So it really is, it's a town meeting article, and after a town meeting approval, then it goes to a ballot question. That's how it would work. So it would be, town meeting would have to say yes, and then it would go to a ballot, and then it would be from there. There are also several ways you can do the election. You could have one election and have 3 people, and the first, second, and third people would be according to, so the highest vote getter would have the 3 years, the second highest vote getter would have 2 years, and the lowest would have the 1 year. So you could have the election all at one time. I'm not sure if it has to wait until the following April, or if you could do it midstream. That I'm not sure of.
Probably the best is get a sense of what you folks want, if you want to put it toward the bylaw, and then have legal counsels walk us through it. Just
Well, right. I mean, we could put it as a warrant article, and if town meeting approves it, then we can go forward with the ballot question.
North Attleboro has 9 selectmen. That's
Some
incredible.
of that.
I'm telling you.
yeah.
That sounds a bit much.
If you want to know, when I was in Athol years ago, Greenfield had 23.
Wow.
They had 2 different boards that were, but
Well, some of the
There's one-
cities have town councils that have
not
large
7 or
numbers.
9.
Yeah. But looking through the data you send us, it's like 60% of the towns in Massachusetts that have boards, 60% of them are 5-man boards.
A lot of them, yeah. Yeah, I didn't count the cities. Cities are different,
Yeah.
And there's a couple that they say they have town councils, but they're really boards of selectmen. It's just nomenclature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
just
could
for,
have,
because we're not, I'm sorry, just because we're not posting the survey, on the screen right now. It's 147 of 292 towns have three-member boards of selectmen in the Commonwealth, and in Bristol County alone, it's 8 out of the 16 towns. So it's split right down the middle.
Those are
For the
that's
most
from
part.
the MMA, yeah.
Yes.
yep, 50-50. So we could have town council form a warrant article, and the board can vote to move that warrant article for town meeting, and then at town meeting, townspeople decide.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
All right.
We need a motion for that, or?
No, we're gonna vote on when the town warrant comes out. I mean, when we submit our warrant articles, we'll submit it and we'll vote on it all at the same time.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the February 22nd, 2021 minutes?
Motion granted.
Do I have a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Grunwald,
Yes.
Selectman Matthews,
Yes.
and Selectman Pacheco.
Yes. Town administrators report.
I just had the one thing, the security cameras. We actually had Comcast come out. They did a survey, which basically they look at the building, decide what camera. It's roughly $360 plus tax for the town hall. We're going to pay it out of the building improvement fund. So I'm going to go ahead with that one. Transfer station, since it was opened under George and it kind of expired, we reopened that to them. So we're trying to get a new quote for them to do the transfer station, 2 exterior, 1 interior.
All right. Anybody have any questions for him?
Nope.
Okay.
So,
I guess I'll turn it over to personnel.
So I'm not exactly sure what this is referring to, but the part-time employee for the Council on Aging using the CARES Act funding.
yeah, I actually had a discussion with Barbara Place, the director of the COA, and Rose, one of them, I shouldn't say use names, right? Just went out on medical leave for a while, and one just came back. They've also had just an overwhelming lot of folks that could use some assistance. The CARES Act, we checked with the fire chief, can fund a part-time position to do that. She's looking for like 16 hours. And it can work for a variety of different things that's related to CARE Acts, like food distribution, transportation, medical, wellness checks, COVID related questions and help and aid. This is kind of a list. She said it would be very helpful to do that. It would only be part-time, seasonal, or temporary, and it would terminate when the CARES Act terminates, or when you could terminate it beforehand. But right now we have some instability over at the COA with personnel, just things happening. So I think this is a short, easy way to do that.
All right, so what do we need to do now to put this in motion? Do I need to make a motion?
You folks would need to approve us a part-time position up to 16 hours to provide CARES Act related assistance to the residents throughout the COA, and we would place it under the COA staffing.
I just have a question. Is the COA open now for residents?
If I remember right, no, but like I said, a couple of times I've been there, there's been a couple of people in there that aren't staff, but I think they're volunteers helping with the brown bag and the food, putting that together. And it's kind of hard to always rely on volunteers. They do a good job when they're there. It's just, they tend to be an older group and things have to be, that's all.
Yeah, I just don't want anybody questioning why we're using CARES money if the COA is not open. That's my only fear. I mean, if you said that the fire chief and you approved it, I'm fine with that. I just don't want anybody coming back questioning us.
It's more of a stopgap because as you know, our staff is older and our volunteers are older, and we're having that transition where a lot of people are out. We just had one come back, another one's leaving, and it's just, we need that stopgap in between. So.
Yeah, my only concern, do you think we'll have any trouble finding a person that's willing to do this job? Understanding that as soon as the CARES Act money runs out, that they'll not have that job anymore. I mean, hopefully.
No, I think, we've had a couple, inquire. We've told them that we'll probably end it before the CARES Act money runs out. We have $302,000 in CARES Act. I would not use a significant sum of that at all for this position, but I think from now to December, I think it's worth looking at. From what I read and from what I understand, we're going to be in this kind of situation till the end to December. So,
and this, will there be any kind of, I can't imagine any unions having issues with this or anything of that nature.
not to my knowledge at the time. And plus, I know the town may get more money with the new act going through Congress, good, bad, or indifferent. So,
yeah,
I'm not counting on that.
You might want to just inform the union. I'm not sure. Just as an FYI, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think open lines of communication probably better off.
I'll do it as a courtesy, but it's exempt under the union contract as a seasonal temporary employee under 20 hours.
Just as a
courtesy,
kind of a courtesy. Yeah. All right. I'll make a motion to approve for.
Before we do that, we actually need a pay rate for this position as well. I don't know what you want to do with that.
For me, I was going to do the recommend. I think our base rate's what, $15.30. That's what I was going to ask for. Whatever the base.
Well, step one of a clerk is $17.30, I think, and the lowest pay rate in the union somewhere around what you just mentioned, 15 and change.
Well, it's not a clerk, you know what I mean? It's going to be multitasking. So, you have a better sense about me than I do about the.
You know what? I'll make a motion to approve at $15.30 for right now, for the part-time employee under the CARES Act, and will end once the CARES Act funding is gone, or when we don't need the person anymore.
Thank you.
Is there a job description for this person?
No, I'm going to put one together, but it's reflective, but it's going to be restrictive to only doing the CARES Act, which kind of specifies what we can use that position for. So it's really going to just kind of cut and paste that and use that as a different, but I'll do that. I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay. All right. So did we have a motion?
Yeah, we need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Selectman Grunwald,
Yes.
Selectman Pacheco,
Yes.
and Selectman Matthews.
Yes. Yeah, I just think that any help we can get down there is good, but I just want to try to, I've been conditioned now to try to see things that'll, the potential issues that will come up, so.
Mhm.
For example, we have 45 brown bag deliveries. According to the chief, we would be able to use a person to do some of those, to do those deliveries. And, sometimes it takes a long time to get those all done, more than a day, so.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else for the regular agenda?
Yeah, there's a few things I'd just like to get an update on the old business. The Council on Aging project, did we get any reports yet on that?
Nope, I believe Andy was meeting with the COA board sometime last week.
You did.
That was the first step to get that process underway. So now that should be done.
Okay. And the town beach and the town boat ramp, did have some questions on that. Last year, when we talked about that, Chief Abbott had suggested a system, I forget what it was called,
Kiosk.
kiosk. Right, thank you, Lisa. Did we look into that? Is that something we want to do? So
Right
we-
now, the lead in our office is going to be Luann. If she wants to pop on and give, because I know she's had some discussions with that. And I know her and Tanya and Jeff and Mike are going to do some research on that, on the whole project. But thank you, Luann.
I'm looking at the kiosks, and George had mentioned this morning that Carlton might have some information on those, ones that he was suggested. So I shot him an email today to see what he's got there. And I've met with Tanya. We're going over all the regulations and the CMRs for the town beach and the boat ramp to make sure that we're in compliance with things like marking the swim areas and looking at the parking and stuff like that. And we're going to do an on-site visit with Mike from the assessor's office, Tanya and myself on Thursday at the town beach. So we kind of get the lay of the land and see where we're going for that. So it's kind of where we stand at this point.
Two things to note. Luann used to oversee some beaches and parks and recs when she worked for the Girl Scouts, so I think she's qualified to look at that. What's wholly short on the safety factors down there. And just from, I don't know if anyone knows, as you drive in, there's that kind of sand dune area. We don't know if that's town owned or privately owned. So that's one of the reasons why I have Mike down there to trying to figure out what the town actually owns down there.
There's a plot that we looked at last year. I don't know where that is right now, but because when we were looking at that for parking and where
Yeah.
people could park. So it's somewhere. I know that.
Do you
And
know
I
if
think it's actually owned by New Bedford. So that was another thing.
do you know if we ever striped the parking lot? Was that ever?
So I followed up with Rep Schmidt, and he's looking into it because we were supposed to get $25,000 to repave and stripe the parking lot. So he's following up. We should all get an answer soon about that, because that was part of the transportation bond for last year. But that was also pre-COVID. So I don't know where the state money is right now. So he's looking into it for us.
Because I know trash and parking issues and trying to look ahead on those, that's all.
Yep, so that we should get 25 to, I think it was 25, it might even be 30, but anyway, in that general area. So he's gonna try to get back to us, and they're tracking that down now.
Be nice to chip seal that, that's all.
The phone systems, are we all set with that?
Luann actually began that process today or a little bit last week, trying to get the ball rolling with the highway department, fire stations, and highway COA. That's the third one.
All right, perfect. I also want to bring up to the board, it's been hard for us because we're always the last person to get the license or the permit or whatever, and it's already gone through conservation, the planning board, and everything else. But I think when we have licenses and permits that actually come to the board, I'd like to have a conversation with the other departments as to who sets the parameters for operating hours, right? Because if they come to us and that's under our purview, it should be under our purview, not conservation saying, oh, okay, because what does it have to do? What do operating hours have to do with conservation? And what do operating hours have to do with the planning board? If we're the ones that have to sign off on a license, and that's one of the restrictions that we can do, I think that we should talk to other departments and take that out from them and put it back to, or just leave it with the Board of Selectmen.
You want to send the boards?
Yeah, I don't know the process for that, and I was thinking about that because it's so hard to put our own restrictions on operating hours when some other department
Right.
already made that call, and it's hard. So unless they leave it in there and they say, unless the Board of Selectmen, but the final decision rests with the Board of Selectmen, some sort of like gap to get out of whatever the restriction is.
That's something we could bring up to legal.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is draft something, send it over to Mark, get him, and then send it back. But I think it's not so much you have to, just reinforcing the right of the Board of Selectmen, that they have that responsibility, they're not passing it off to anybody else. They're reserving that right. So that's what I'm going to ask.
Peter, is this how it works everywhere? I mean, these other boards make the decisions, and when it comes to us, we really have no choice, because that's happened with the last 2-3 large projects that we really weren't too crazy about. But it seems like,
I mean, when I was in Dudley, which is a while back, the items that the Board of Selectmen approved were approved by the Board of Selectmen. Sometimes, like someone would go to the planning board for business or operation, they would say, we would like these hours. The planning board would say, fine, but that's really the determination of the Board of Selectmen. Everyone kind of knew their place. It just made it simpler. So that's how we kind of did it. We had pre-technical meetings on things. We would make sure this went to the Board of Health and this went to the planning board and these things went to the Board of Selectmen. Yeah. But in the end, I mean, I think it's just people forgetting and kind of complacent for a while. So maybe if the board reasserts their authority, it'll cure that. That's what I'm thinking.
So I also would like to go back to what we used to do a while ago. And when a new business would come into town, then there would be like a sheet, like a sign-off sheet, and it would be reviewed by the Board of Selectmen, reviewed by the fire chief, reviewed by, the police department, reviewed by all these departments. And then that's when you could really say, we would like to restrict these hours. We would like more information on, the traffic pattern or anything like that. So when it finally comes to us, we're not like the last kind of to know. I mean, we all have the ability to go to a public hearing and we all should try to keep up with that stuff, but it's hard, right? Because all of a sudden at the last minute, it comes to us and then we're expected to vote on something that we might not be all familiar with.
It's
So-
nice to have a pre-technical meeting, as I call
Yes.
them. It's just all the departments sit down,
Mhm.
the guy comes in or the people come in, they make their presentation, fire makes their recommendation, police does, so does highway, everybody involved, right? And
Yep.
so they leave that meeting knowing that, and like, so I find those are helpful. If we don't do those, and I'm not sure we do or not, that's what we should do. Those are very helpful.
So we did do them, but then like George just said, there were 3 big businesses
Yeah.
that did not follow that protocol, right? But then we had Air Gas that came in and did that, and we had the marijuana place that came in and did that for us. So yeah, we used to do that, but I mean, and it's not
It's
like
really
we had a lot of
staff-driven.
we haven't had a lot of projects lately anyway, right? So
Yeah, but
I
it's
think
staff-driven.
better to go back to that technical review part.
Yeah. It's really staff-driven. The staff says, this is how we do it. It's really not to the businesses, so you have to make sure your staff does it. That's all.
All right, so I just wanted to put that on for our next agenda for discussion. I just wanted to make sure that we could have that there. All right, I don't think we have to go for number 1, right, Tim? Exec session number 1?
We might want to go into that one just in case
Okay.
anything's popped up.
All right, no worries. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Public Employees Union, Local 1144 Lyuna, the Freetown Police Association, the Freetown Full-Time Firefighters Association, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position, and the chair so declares, and I do declare. And the same Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A6, to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and I do.
Motion granted.
Have a second?
Second,
All in favor? And we will not be returning into open session. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Grunwald,
yes.
Selectman Matthews,
Yes.
and Selectman Pacheco.
Yes.
All right, so I'll stop the live stream and the recording. Thanks, everybody.